What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Matt is going to be joining me in just a moment, and we are supposed to break down the games for NFL Conference Championship weekend on this podcast. However, I feel as though this is going to double as a therapy session for Matt since his Motor City Kitties, the Detroit Lions, were eliminated this past Saturday. And I'm sure he's going to want to share his feelings on the game, the very unfortunate and disappointing end to his favorite team's season. So we're going to talk to him about that and see how he's feeling now that it's been a couple of days since the loss. But at the end, we will preview both the NFC Championship between the should be fighting Georges and the Eagles, and then the AFC Championship between the Bills and the Chiefs. We'll break down the games, tell you everything you need to know, and then pick who is going to win at the end and go to the Super Bowl. But before we get started, reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Really appreciate you guys listening. We always love to hear from you. Let us know who you're picking to win this weekend and why. Let us know how your playoff picks are going. And again, you will not get spam back from that email address. You will get me reaching out to you. So hit us up. Let's go get Matt. Let's start therapy. Let's go. All right, Matt is here. Matt, I want to start off this podcast by telling you that this is a safe space. You're with friends. Nobody's going to harm you here. How you doing, buddy?
Threats are everywhere.
Yeah, I should have said that more sympathetically, like, how you doing, buddy?
The first 48 hours were pretty rough. And from there, I feel like I've settled in. Um, in a lot of ways, I think I lingered on last year more. I think I was stuck on that NFC Championship game more. It's very similar in that like it was all self-inflicted. I'm here. We're moving forward. The only way out is through. And it's fine. We'll win next year's Super Bowl.
There you go. That's a good attitude. I'm proud of you for being here because I didn't know what
Yeah.
to expect, being that, last year after the NFC Championship, you were here, but you were pretty distraught. Uh, this year, though, it's like I was talking to my wife about this after the game on Saturday, and obviously, for anybody who hasn't caught on, we're referring to the Lions' loss to the Commanders at home. But I was like, man, as a Lions fan, I would just feel like, what do we have to do? Like, what do we have to do to get over this hump? Because
Yeah.
last year you go to the NFC Championship and you have whatever the lead was, huge lead at halftime. And then you come back and you're 15-2 and just
hmm
smoking everyone this year,
Yeah.
only for the defense to just reach a critical mass of injuries where
Yep.
it just gets to the point where it's not sustainable. And
I
like three more guys go down
I
against the
feel
Commanders. And
yep, when Amik Robertson went down, I feel like that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from the Commanders because I was very impressed that they came into
No.
Detroit and handled their business the way they did.
What more could you have asked from them to do? It's not about them because they put up a shit ton of points. And like I don't know, maybe you could criticize the defense because we still scored a lot of points, but the reality is this is a team that was putting up over 30 points per game all season long. So like it was expected that win or lose, we're still going to score points.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, there's that critical mass of injuries, and like you can't turn the ball over 5 times in a game and expect to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did it once, but like that was a miracle. that it even happened once.
The 180 on Goff that's happened in Metro Detroit since that
It's
game is insane.
absurd.
Yeah. The
Like,
going from they were chanting Jared Goff for like a whole year. It's been this
yep,
Jared Goff
at
chant at
like
the draft and Red Wings
any
games.
sporting event that you can think of, and also probably things that weren't sporting events.
Yeah. It's pretty much any time you were outside in Detroit, they were chanting
I've
Jared Goff.
I've seen it on airplanes. Like,
So he melted down on Saturday. And you had mentioned before they gave him his extension that you were nervous about the extension because he is capable of having games like this,
hmm
where it's not like he had a bad drive or a bad quarter. It's like the whole game is a disaster.
yeah,
And I think that that's a big portion of why the Rams wanted to move on. Like one, because you get someone
hmm
like Stafford, you're always doing that to get a top five
yeah,
quarterback.
yeah.
But two, it's like they knew what he was capable of as well.
hmm
And as much as he's evolved and gotten better since coming to Detroit, the valleys are still there. And it just came at
Yeah.
the worst possible time.
They're they're more infrequent, but they do still exist. And
He had that one last year too. I think it was like the Bears game that was
mhm.
particularly bad last year.
That's why I kind of like chuckled this year when people were thinking like, oh, like maybe the Bears games are like one of the ones that will drop. I'm like, no, like the Bears weren't the reason that we lost to the Bears.
Yeah.
uh, I will say that a lot of the rhetoric towards Jared Goff right now is unfair. You cannot sit there on Reddit and tell me 2 weeks ago that he has already surpassed Matthew Stafford as the best quarterback in Lions history. And then after that performance, tell me that you don't think we can win with him. Like you don't get to do both. You don't. And
I'm a big John
that
Kitna guy. John Kitna
and
was my jam.
hey, if nothing else, he was fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but like that was kind of my thing when I was seeing that stuff is like I love what Jared has done here. But people were drinking the Kool-Aid so hard that they were already acting as though Jared Goff had won the Super Bowl here for us. And Pats fans are probably the last person to say this to, but like you don't have it until you have it. There's no reason for us to even consider going a different direction at quarterback. Financially, it wouldn't make any sense anyways. But like the fan reactions around this have just been quite ridiculous. Some of the reactions towards Ben Johnson have been ridiculous. Well, I don't think he called a particularly good game. Um, and I especially don't like that the trick play that you run in that high pressure moment involves having Jamison Williams throw a ball downfield. Like, I just think that you're asking for him to get flustered if things don't get perfectly, and he did.
Yeah. I'm going to forgive you for your Pat's comment because one, I know you're hurting. And two, I know that you're talking about Pat's fans who believed in Mac Jones. And we're wrong, and not me, who knows that I have a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Drake May. But yeah, I think the coordinator thing is such a stupid thing to talk about because just
hmm
like by virtue of the way the NFL works, unless you win the Super Bowl, your last game as a coordinator is not going to be a good one. like if you get eliminated in the playoffs, it's people aren't going to be like, wow, he had a particularly great game that day.
Yeah.
And people are now like, Ben Johnson signs a $14 million contract or 14 million guaranteed a
Yeah.
year or something like that. Some
Well,
insane contract.
it's I think it was 13 mil a year, but
Yeah.
yeah,
And
which
it's
puts
like,
him fourth
yeah. So
in
he
the
becomes like
NFL.
the fourth highest paid coach. The Jets are
Like
hiring Aaron Glenn.
22% more than Dan Campbell makes, which is just insane to me.
Yeah.
But that is the tax that Chicago has to pay.
Well, if you want an elite coach or an elite
If
coordinator
you
to come coach for you in
if you
Chicago,
want someone to come work for Ryan Poles, you have to pay more.
yeah. I just feel bad for Ben Johnson because as good of a coach as he could have been, he now cannot be a good
No.
coach because he's Chicago's coach. And you
Yeah.
can't be a good coach and also coach the Chicago Bears. Just that just doesn't happen.
No. And I genuinely don't think it's going to work there because Ben runs a lot of obviously like everyone thinks of the trick plays, but he runs a lot of really wild stuff in the run game that I think the average fan probably doesn't even notice how like wild it is in terms of like what you're asking of your offensive lineman to do in blocking situations. And like the the reason he could do that here is because we have a absurdly talented offensive line room. Like when Graham Glasgow is your sixth best offensive lineman, you're doing really, really fucking good. On their best day, Chicago's offensive line is bad.
Yeah.
On their worst day, they're god awful.
They definitely need to invest in the offensive line this offseason. I've seen some mocks that have them taking Ashton Jeanty now, and they're like, oh, Jeanty in Ben Johnson's scheme, like he'll be the next, like, Jameer Gibbs has been awesome there, and Monty and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, those guys are awesome. And yes, I think Jeanty's going to be an awesome running back. But just like you said, the reason that Detroit's offense is so good is because you have the best offensive line in the league surrounded by elite weapons. And the Bears, like, they're going to need a lot of work.
Yeah.
And as good as I think Ben Johnson can be coordinating an offense for Caleb Williams, he's not the one that's responsible for fixing that offensive line, right? Like Ryan Poles is still that guy, and Ryan Poles is still the GM there. And I don't trust Ryan Poles to make
Well,
solid decisions.
uh, former NFL offensive lineman Ryan Poles has repeatedly, year after year, neglected the interior offensive line.
It's incredible that a former offensive line guy is not like the first thing he's doing is going and getting offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Our new coach, Mike Vrabel, Patriots' new Super Bowl winning head coach, because I know what I got, even though I don't got it yet. Uh, he's been talking already about like he's like, yeah, we're gonna fix the offensive and defensive lines. First thing we're gonna do is start winning in the
Yeah.
trenches. And it's like, yeah, that's a smart thing to do because we have a shitty offensive line. That's what you do when you have a bad offensive line is you invest in it. And Ryan Poles hasn't done so for years. So
It's important to remember too that it's the offensive and defensive lines that raise the floor of what your team does, of how your team can play. It's the quarterback that can raise the ceiling.
mhm.
But like if you don't have talent on those lines, then in any given game, your floor is as bad as those lines.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll see how Ben Johnson does in Chicago moving forward and how Aaron Glenn does in the New York, which,
Yeah.
like, speaking of situations that are not going to go well, not
Yeah.
because not anything against Aaron Glenn, but just the fact that he's coaching the
It's New
Jets.
York.
Yeah.
I will say Man, that defense could be good though.
Yeah, it probably will be again, as
Yeah.
it has been in the past. But he wants to keep Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback next year. So I already know he's a bad
Yeah.
coach.
I mean, what else are they gonna do? Like
Well,
financially, they don't really
maybe just
have a choice.
encourage him to retire.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, there will still be a cap hit for him though.
yeah, I think the thing that's more interesting about this situation, though, than how are Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn going to do is the fact that like the Lions were 15-2 this season. They very well should be contenders. The
Yeah.
fact that they have Dan Campbell in the roster they have, and I trust what's his face, your
Brad
GM,
Holmes.
Brad
Yeah.
Holmes, to add to that. But you're going to be replacing like not just your offensive and defensive coordinators who went and got
Hmm.
head coaching jobs. The Patriots just hired your defensive line coach as their
Hmm.
DC. There's rumors that Aaron Glenn is going to take Mark Brunell with him to be the OC for the Jets. There's This is what happens when you're
Yep.
suffering from success like this is like not every year
Yeah.
is like last year where everybody's like we're coming back to get the job done. Some of these guys got to strike while the iron's hot and get
Yeah.
their jobs and their money. And now you
Right.
got to rebuild your entire staff, which is
Yeah.
notoriously difficult.
Right. And it's important to remember too that like Dan built this staff, right? Ben Johnson was nobody when he found him. Aaron Glenn was thought of highly as a DB coach, but had no experience as a defensive coordinator. I don't think Mark Brunell had actually ever coached anywhere
No,
before.
all Mark Brunell had done before then is bitch about Deflategate.
Yeah,
Fucking chode. I think overall the Lions will be fine. They have too much
yeah.
roster talent to come back and be bad next year.
No,
I don't know
no.
that they'll be 15-2 with an
Yeah,
all new staff, but I
yeah.
they're still going to be on the list of
No.
contenders to start next
What's
season.
what's crazy is that Jaden Daniels was incredible in that game. And still, I think Gibbs might have been the best player on the field.
Yeah.
Like,
I thought Gibbs was the best player in that game and like in fact did not touch the ball enough. It's like
yeah,
a 3-point shooter who's shooting like 48%. It's like, okay, if you're shooting 48% from three, you're not touching the ball enough. You're not shooting enough
yeah,
threes. You need to shoot more threes because your percentage should never be that good. Like
yeah,
we need to have you keep shooting threes until you're down about like 38 to 42%. You should not be shooting 48%. You're not touching the ball enough. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think overall they'll be okay. I'm just interested to see how they build out this staff now,
Hmm.
especially because all of the coach needy teams got a head start on them
Yeah.
and are hiring their guys away. But
The the rumors are is that at least the decision on defensive coordinator has already been made. They just haven't announced it yet.
yeah,
So I would expect that we hear it by like Monday at the latest, probably.
I also heard Mark Brunell would likely stay if he was promoted from quarterback coach to OC, but that if he doesn't get promoted, he might go with Aaron Glenn. So you might have your guys in house already.
Hmm.
We'll find out. But I wanted to ask you about the combination of, I mean, this game in particular, but also the combination of this and last year is like, I, yeah, I take it with a grain of salt because I also watched my team win 6 Super Bowls, but
Yeah,
I remember some of the Patriots like horrific losses more than I remember some of like the wins. And
yeah,
we had some really bad losses throughout the dynasty run in the playoffs. And I was like catatonic after those losses. And like if they were in the division
yep,
round or the AFC championship, I would have so much trouble like watching the next game and moving on to the next week. I would just be like, no, I can't get over it.
yeah,
To go 15-2 and have like the hope that this team had only for it to be dashed in the first round is like massively disappointing. Is this a top five all time sports disappointment for you? This Lions game?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I was trying to think about what my top five were. And for always and forever, the 2007 Patriots Super Bowl will always be my number one most disappointing sports loss. Because that's the one when you stop and like really think about it and think about the fact that they could have been 19-0 and we would never debate who the greatest team of all time was ever again and just be like, yeah, that Patriots team went 19-0 and annihilated everyone. That's the one where I think about it and my stomach like churns. But that my number two thing for most disappointing sports moment is not a game. It's actually when the Kings drafted Marvin Bagley instead of Luka Doncic. And those are my two, like far and away. Those are my top two. And I was trying to think about what other ones I would have. And I was like, none stick out to me as like those two are the worst. And
Yeah.
I honestly debated putting the Luka Marvin Bagley thing ahead of the '07 Patriots Super Bowl because you missed out on this guy for the next 15 to 20 years of my
Yeah.
life. And I fucking knew what he was going to be before he got drafted. I was saying it on the pod. Anybody that would listen to me, I was like, this guy's a future MVP.
Yeah.
We have to draft him. I don't understand why he's not going first because it was just like, oh, Aiton's going first and then there's a decision. And I was like, no, this is the guy. And that still kills me. And the '07 Super Bowl still kills me. But I don't know. There's been other ones like the Bruins lost a game 7 at home to the Blues in the Stanley Cup Finals. The 2003 Red Sox was pretty bad in the moment, but then they come back the next year and win the World Series. So the sting was really taken off of Aaron Boone hitting that home run in game 7 of the ALCS. But yeah, anyway, Matt, I've been there before. no, I know it's tough.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I think five for me would be the Dallas picked up pass interference game. Just God, we had it in the bag. It was there. I would say, I can't even remember how many consecutive points it was that LeBron scored,
Yeah.
but it was
It's like
enough.
28 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that the moment that LeBron, all for all intents and purposes, ended Detroit's real chances of getting back to the NBA Finals. Um, and then uh, this game, and then last year's NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And you know what number one is.
The true question in my mind was, can the Lions possibly pass Rasheed Wallace, leaving Robert Ory wide open?
No,
The answer is no.
no, no. I don't know if it's possible because like I remember watching at the time and being like, how is that the one guy that like it's the only thing he does is hit big shots.
His name is literally Big Shot Bob.
Yeah.
Also, like Robert Ory was a ring chaser extraordinaire. Like we always focus on the fact that people like at the end of their careers nowadays will like go and sign with someone like the Warriors or like the Celtics or whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm just trying to like get a ring before I retire." And we're like, "That's a ring chaser." Robert Ory, I think played on like or won championships with 3 teams: the Rockets team that had Akeem Olajuwon, the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, and then the Tim Duncan Spurs were like the 3 teams that he played on. It was just like this guy only went to teams that were going to win multiple championships.
Yeah.
And he has something crazy like 8 rings.
Seven. But yeah,
7. Yeah.
which is like
He's
and
not
that's
like
why
a
Robert Ory is higher than LeBron on my NBA all-time
that's why
rankings.
Robert Ory is truly the GOAT because he knew how to pick them back in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Take that, Le GM.
I I did want to tell you though that I kind of understand what you're going through with the Lions the last couple of years because I was looking back on my most disappointing sports moments and I was looking at 2007 and like Tom Brady's playoff history. And I think that this gets forgotten is that the Patriots went through about a 10-year stretch between so they win three Super Bowls,
Mhm.
2001, 2003, and 2004. And they go through this like 10-year stretch where they didn't win another Super Bowl, which I know is like not a lot. I'm not saying it's like this horrible drought, but there's this stretch of time from 2007 to 2014 where they lose the 2007 Super Bowl to go 19-1. They come back the next year, and in the first quarter of the first game, Tom Brady tears his ACL and is done for the season. Matt Castle plays the rest of the games. They go 11-5 still and miss the
Yeah.
playoffs. 2009, they get absolutely mollywopped at home in the divisional round by the Ravens, 33-14 in a game where Joe Flacco goes 5 of 10 passing. And Ray Rice and Willis McGahee just run roughshod all over the Patriots.
Yeah.
Then they come back the next year and lose in the divisional round to the Jets, who we've talked about that game quite a few times on this podcast. Uh, they go to a couple AFC championships after that, lose those to Peyton Manning and to other stuff. And it's all the way till 2014 where they go to that Super Bowl against the Seahawks. I forgot to mention 2011, they do make the Super Bowl, but they lose to the Giants again. And then 2012, I think it's like 12-13, they lose in the AFC championship both years. Then 14, they go to that Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks and they look like they're about to win. And then I forget the wide receiver's name, but this guy makes like a crazy catch down the sideline. And it's like flashbacks of David Tyree and Mario Manningham in the two Giant Super Bowls. And even Tom Brady's talked about it. And he was just like, dude, not again. And then Malcolm Butler makes an interception that like completely turns the franchise around. Cause like you think about like where they would have been if Seattle beats them. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, so now you haven't won a Super Bowl in 10 years. You've lost three and you have all these other horrible playoff losses. Like the narrative on Tom Brady would have been very different. But I was just thinking about that 2007 to 2013 area where it's like Super Bowl loss, horrible divisional losses, another Super Bowl loss, more horrible AFC championship game losses. And I commiserate with you a bit, but on the other hand, I watched my team win six Super Bowls, so I can't.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I
it's
can't. My dad's like, you should tell Matt on the podcast that you know how he feels, and I'm like, Matt's gonna say, "Fuck you! You won six Super Bowls. You don't know how I feel."
yeah, yeah. I appreciate you trying, but
Yeah,
that is nowhere near the same.
I'm doing my best. But speaking of Super Bowls, we do have two football games this weekend, believe it or
Yeah,
not. And the winners of these games will go to the Super Bowl. It is conference
not
championship
if I have
weekend.
anything to say about it.
Take them out, Matt, because I think I'm just at the point where, as a Patriots fan, there's no good option left for me. It's like I hate the Chiefs, I hate the Bills, I hate the Eagles, and the Commanders. If they win, all I'm ever going to hear the rest of my life is like, you guys got Drake May in that what class that had Jaden Daniels. How much does that suck? So until we start winning Super Bowls with Drake May and Mike Vrabel, because it's happening.
Yeah. Uh, hey, so out of these four teams that are playing this weekend, how many of them do you think outgained their opponent last week?
Oh, I actually know the answer to this. It's zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Once you get to the divisional round, it's not about being better than the other team. It's about not fucking up.
Yeah. It's about playing better football,
Yeah.
situational football. But yeah, I saw that all four of the games last week, the team that had the most yards lost. So I think the key to championship weekend is to get outgained by your opponent. Game one, Sunday at 3 o'clock. And again, I just want to mention, because I said this last week, that when you have two football games on, the 3 o'clock, 6:30 scheduling is the optimal time.
Yeah.
Because that Ravens Bills game ended on Sunday, like right around 10 o'clock. I was like in bed. I was all ready for bed. The game ended. I turned the TV off and I was like, it's time for sleep. And I'm getting to bed at a reasonable hour. 3 o'clock Sunday, the Washington should be fighting Georges visit the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to live my dream of making lunch and dinner for the two home teams, like the cuisine of the home teams. I've always wanted to do this and I never have. So it's Philly cheesesteaks for lunch and barbecue for dinner. It'd be a good Sunday.
Okay.
I want to ask you a question about this game.
Yeah.
How many quarterbacks in the NFL are you taking ahead of Jaden Daniels right now to win a playoff game?
Maybe two.
I was thinking four.
Like I was gonna go four, and then I was like, well, I
Do
mean,
I
like only two of those guys are still playing, so.
do I trust Lamar Jackson more than Jaden Daniels?
But and
Yeah,
I will say, like, for Lamar Jackson, whatever you want to say about the first half, like he did his job in the second half. Like, not on him.
I
But
watched those Mark Andrews plays and thought to myself, why would Lamar Jackson do this? I was like, obviously, Mark Andrews fumbling is Lamar Jackson's fault.
yes.
Obviously. Um, yeah, I'd take Mahomes,
Hmm.
I'd take Josh Allen. I would still take Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
He didn't make the playoffs because of unfortunate circumstances this year, but I'd still take him.
Because he wasn't good enough to make his team win.
And I think this might be a little controversial. It's not going to be controversial on this podcast, but maybe with listeners, I might still take Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
Uh, but honestly, I was trying to debate like where does Jaden Daniels rank in like the best quarterbacks in the league,
Hmm.
and I think it's like the same conversation. It's like Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, but then you have Jackson in there,
Yeah.
and those are like your top four with a bullet, and then you could really debate after that who is number five. I think at this point with
Yeah.
what happened with Herbert and Stroud.
Hmm.
I want to say like Baker's up there now, but
Yeah.
we just watched Jaden Daniels beat Baker.
Right.
But anyways,
Well, and if we hadn't seen Goff the way he did last week, you might have said Goff.
yeah, might have had
But
Goff. But yeah, it's just the list of guys that I would take over Jaden Daniels right now, whether I'm saying like who's the best quarterback or who's the quarterback I trust the most to win me a playoff game right now. It's
yeah.
not a lot. It's not
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, when it comes to next year, with what we said about Stroud could potentially apply to Daniels. I'm not saying that like he's at a ceiling, but I think expecting him to just progress linearly is a bit much. He
Yeah.
could
But
potentially even take a step back. But right now, like this Washington team is a fucking buzzsaw.
yeah, even if Jaden Daniels is at his ceiling, like this is the difference between him and
Yeah.
Stroud. Even if he is at his ceiling, he might be a top five quarterback right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, maybe your ceiling is that you're a top five quarterback. Congratulations. And if you do have progression the next couple of years, now we're
Yeah.
starting to talk about very rarefied air where
Yeah.
like rookie quarterbacks don't do this. There was a list going around this week about rookie quarterbacks who have made the conference championship in their first year as a starter. And it's
Yeah.
like Joe Flacco, Mark Sanchez, um, Russell Wilson, I think was on there. But like the common denominator for all the guys that was on this
Yeah.
list is that they're off or their defense and special
Like
teams was really good.
Roethlisberger.
Yeah, that was the one I was missing. Big
Yeah.
Ben. But the defense and special team ranking was like super high. They had this stat where they like combined the two, and it was like, oh, he had the third, he had the second, he had the third. And the combined defensive and special team rankings of the Washington should be fighting Georges is like 20th or something like that. So, like, make no mistake that Jaden Daniels is the reason that they're here. And typically, when a rookie gets this far, it's because the team is the reason they're there and the rookie didn't fuck it up. So,
Yeah.
we're talking more like Patrick Mahomes' first year as a starter, carrying the team to the AFC Championship, not
Yeah.
like Ben Roethlisberger first year as a starter. My team is really good around me,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Um, that said, though, I think that this game is a coin toss to me right now.
Yeah.
One, because like I can find a bunch of reasons that I want to pick the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. But then every time I want to pick them, I'm just like, yeah, but the other team has Jaden Daniels. And like you said, they're a buzzsaw right now.
Yeah.
He's been magical for some time. And just the deeper I get into the playoffs, the more I'm like, okay, who has a better quarterback?
Mhm.
Who has a better coach? And
Yeah.
we saw with the Rams, like the Rams almost
If
made the
if
comeback
the
and pulled up that
conditions
upset.
were better in that game, I think the Rams win that game
Yeah. And
because Stafford was definitely able to carve them up.
yeah, but and it's who has the better head coach and the better quarterback. The Rams have the better head coach and quarterback.
Yeah.
And now it's late January and that stuff matters more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels are the better coach and quarterback in this game. The Eagles have
Imagine
better.
saying that in September.
Like, hey, we're going to be in the NFC Championship, and Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels are going to be the guys that you want to ride with.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus. I also think that Washington is in no way afraid of Philly.
No.
They just beat them in Philly not that long ago.
Yep.
Um, I know that Jalen Hurts got knocked out of that game, and the Eagles' record in the last however many games that Jalen Hurts has started and finished is something absurd. But
Mm-hmm.
to go into Philly and put up 36 points against this defense, which is like the number one defense in the NFL,
Yeah.
you have to still have that in the back of your mind and be like, yeah, I'm very confident that I can move the ball against this defense.
Yeah. Well, and this isn't an offense that's been putting up a lot of points.
They kind of like they had two huge runs against the Rams last
Mm-hmm.
week, but aside from that, like the passing game looked horrible.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts got sacked, I think, like 7 times
Yeah.
last week. I, but then on the other hand, Washington has not been good against the run. They were
Mm-mm.
not good against the run last week. And
Yeah.
when you are not good against the run, the number one person that you do not want to see is Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And so part of me is like, yeah, Washington has the better coach and quarterback, but the Eagles have the better everything else. I don't think that Washington has another positional advantage on the Eagles right now.
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like I think the wide receiver core is better than Phillies, but they don't have to be better because the quarterback means that you can get more out of them.
Yeah. It's the wide receiver core might not be better, but the passing game is.
Yeah.
I would put it
And
that way.
and that's what's gonna matter.
Well,
So
especially if AJ Brown is sitting on the sideline more interested in reading a book than he is about what Jalen Hurts is doing next. So I'm very torn on where to go in this game. Philadelphia is currently favored by 6 at home. And I'm looking at the weather on my phone right now, and it's supposed to be low of 25, high of 38 on Sunday in Philly with clear skies. So it's going to be cold. And I heard someone on a podcast say, like, oh, well, Jaden Daniels got to win an outdoor cold playoff game to really prove it. And I'm like, no, no matter what happens to Jaden Daniels in this game, he's
Yeah,
proved it. I don't care if
yeah,
it snows 10 feet and he doesn't complete a pass. He's proved it.
right.
Um, where are you leaning in this game?
I'm with you that this game is kind of a coin flip for me. However, because it's a coin flip, like I just feel you have to go with the better quarterback. It feels like this is gonna bite me in the ass, but I'm gonna go Washington.
I really I want to go Washington. I
I
really
know.
do. You know I hate the Eagles.
Yeah.
I I feel like what I keep doing this season is or this at least this postseason, what I keep doing is doubting the Commanders. I picked the Bucks, I picked the Lions, and last week
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I was like, you know, Jaden Daniels to go into Detroit and win, he'd have to have a Herculean effort, and I don't know if that's in him. And you were like, yeah, he's gonna have to score like 50 points, and then sure enough, he scores nearly 50 points.
Yeah.
And I think I'm also gonna regret this, but I'm gonna pick against Washington again and go with Philly. I honestly I don't really have a reason except for the fact that I feel like a lot of people are jumping on Washington right now, and a lot of people are kind of buying into this run that they're
Yeah.
on. Um, and I feel like what Philly does so well on both sides of the ball is just makes the game so fucking ugly,
Yeah.
so ugly, and it's like I feel like they're just gonna ugly it up, and if it's close and it's ugly, and I just got to rely on Saquon Barkley to make like one huge play to break this game, then
Hmm.
I'll do that. But if I'm right, I'm not going to be happy about it.
Yeah. I just think that there's that X factor that most mobile quarterbacks bring now with like yeah, like the defensive line can absolutely make this game ugly and get some pressure on Jaden Daniels. Um, and he can turn and run for some yards. And sure, like so can Jalen Hurts. But the disadvantage for Philly there is unlike most of these mobile quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts is not good throwing on the run. And Jaden Daniels will kind of eat you alive there.
Yeah. The the other reason, like, I know I just picked Philly, but the thing that makes me kind of think the Commanders are going to win is like, okay, if you're down 5 with 4 minutes left and you got to drive down the field, I would much, 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 much rather have Jaden Daniels than Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
And it's like that one, like it's like 3rd and 8. We have to throw for a first down.
Hmm.
Can you trust Jalen Hurts to get that? And I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to have to not come down to the last couple plays of the game. Like I think Philly needs to like make this super ugly and suffocate this game and get out of here with the win if they're going to win. But uh the other game that's on the slate, 6:30 Sunday night, the Buffalo Bills visit the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City currently favored by 1.5 points. I got really depressed watching that Ravens Bills game. Not because the Bills won, because it didn't really matter to me, but because watching that game, I was like, I don't know if either of these teams have showed me enough to make me believe that they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
I I have a question for you. What would you have needed to see?
I don't know, man. There probably is nothing they could have showed me because I was watching the Kansas City Chiefs game. It was like the first game of the weekend last weekend, and they went to Taylor Swift's box up there, and fucking Caitlin Clark was in the box with Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that, I was like, these goddamn guys are at least going to the Super Bowl because Roger Goodell was like jerking off in a pile of money when he saw Caitlin Clark and Taylor Swift at a Kansas City Chiefs game. The two most famous women in the entire world are like hugging and jumping up and down after Travis Kelce caught a touchdown. And I'm like, Roger Goodell is like, ah, we're going to make so much
We
money.
you can't you can't talk about Roger Goodell jerking off looking at Taylor Swift's box. You can't do that, man.
but, but no, I seriously, I saw Caitlin Clark up there with her, and I was like,
Yeah.
they're going to the Super Bowl because there's no way that they won't. There's just no way they won't at least go to the Super Bowl and have Taylor Swift and Caitlin Clark there. It's like malpractice not to if you're the NFL. And then like immediately after that, there's multiple horrific calls of roughing the passer when the Kansas City Chiefs, it's like 3rd and 13, incomplete pass. Oh, nope, hold on. Here comes the
Yeah.
flag. And then, oh, here's like 2nd and 17. And like Mahomes slides and someone breathes on him and they're like, here comes the flag. I think Mahomes is, if he hasn't already, he's dangerously close to crossing into the general public not liking him anymore.
Yeah.
And like
I would agree.
the foul baiting on Saturday was at an all-time high. And you're now at the point where people like Willie Colon are going on podcasts, the former Pittsburgh Steeler, and they're asking him like, how do you get rid of this like sideline foul baiting thing? And he's like, someone just needs to take his head off. Someone needs to take his head off and just take the penalty. And that's the only way you're going to stop it. Uh, but yeah, like the flopping by Mahomes, the
Yeah.
foul baiting, it's everything we hate about basketball sometimes on a football field. And it doesn't bother me as much on a basketball court, but you see it happen on a football field, and it's just like a whole new level of disgusting to me.
Well,
And I know other guys do it too, but
for me, it's exploitative. Is what it is. I mean, like because he's well aware that A, he's gonna get more calls than most quarterbacks, and B, like quarterbacks do have a lot of stuff in place rules wise to protect them. And I mean, nobody foul baits on the sideline like he does, not to the same degree. And nobody utilizes the late slide like he does.
mm,
Good. Like he is so blatant about that one too. Like so, he will run around and then like the moment it looks like someone is going to launch at him, then he'll get down. And I really wish that a ref would start throwing flags on him for that.
they need to institute a flopping rule like they
Yeah.
did in the NBA. Not that it works 100% of the time in the NBA, but I don't know, man. I guess the thing is if they did have a flopping rule, like they would probably call it on every other team and not call it on the Chiefs.
Yep.
Because we were talking about the fact that Jawan Taylor false starts like literally every single play for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And they called it on Sunday. And I was like, I almost fell out of my chair when they called it. I was like, no way. And then the very next play, he does it again and they don't call it. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so we're just being selective about when we want to call it. And the times we select is when it's not going to be a problem for the Chiefs. So, yeah, going back to your question though of like what would I need to see out of a team to make me believe they could beat Kansas City is like, well, neither of them have Patrick Mahomes, so I'm not going to believe they could beat Kansas City anyway. But particularly for the Bills, they beat the Ravens by playing a very clean game, which is very good for them. But I didn't really particularly feel like they did anything in that game. And you're not just going to beat Kansas City by going to Kansas City and playing a clean game.
Actually,
You
I
also
think
have
that
to
is
do
exactly
stuff.
how you beat them.
Just let them outgain you because
No,
we
like
know.
that's the thing. You play a clean game, like you take uh, this might be a little bit of a spoiler on my where I'm going later, but if you take all the bullshit out of it, like the refs clearly influencing it, if you play a clean game and just like systematically move the ball and put up points, like all year long, this Kansas City team has not been beating teams by doing stuff. They've been beating teams by letting them beat themselves.
We're just going
And
to not do stuff.
yeah, so like the way to beat them is to turn that game against them.
I don't know. I just feel like any game that's close that has Patrick Mahomes in it, Patrick Mahomes is going to win. And like if I was making a case for like how did the Buffalo Bills win this game, I would say I 100% agree. Yes, they 100% have to play a clean game.
Yeah,
But I just in my opinion, you have to do more stuff than you did in the second half of that Ravens game. You
yeah,
didn't do stuff, and that's why the door was open for Lamar to come back. Like
yeah. Well,
you think
and
Patrick Mahomes is not going to get that 2 point
yeah,
conversion at the end of that game?
I will say too, playing a clean game doesn't mean resting on your laurels. I don't think that what they did in that game will work against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that's kind of my
Right.
point.
But still, like, I mean, pretty much his entire career, we've seen the majority of like the comebacks that he has made comes on the heels of critical mistakes by the other team.
Yeah.
And like that,
But the Bills, like, people are going to ignore this because the Bills won. The Bills made the critical mistake in that
yeah,
game by kicking that field goal late in the game.
yeah,
And people are like, well, it was a good decision because they won. It's like, no,
no,
they won because Mark Andrews and like not really Lamar, but Mark Andrews fucked up.
yeah.
As much as I love Mark Andrews, like probably don't show your face in Baltimore until next season, buddy. But
Well, yeah, they've already been giving him fucking death threats.
yeah,
So,
if you're in that same situation against Kansas City and you're like, oh yeah, we're up by 4, let's kick a field goal and go up 7, you've already lost. Or
yeah,
go up 8, 5, and 8, whatever the numbers are. If the game's within one score and you give the ball to Patrick Mahomes, you've already lost that game. I'm gonna
yeah,
tell you that. The thing that Buffalo did earlier this season when they beat Kansas City, if you go all the way back and remember, probably the play of the year is
hmm,
that like fourth and short where they could have kicked a field goal
yep,
and gone up by 7 or 8. And they were like, fuck it. We're putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands and letting him make a play. And he
yeah,
makes that amazing, like 20 whatever yard rushing touchdown. You
yeah,
have to go for the jugular. So it's like clean game,
yeah,
go for the jugular, be brave enough to make the big call on fourth down, like
hmm,
have the balls. And you did not do that last week. And that's more where I look at
hmm.
it and I'm like,
So,
the Lions were the team I really thought could beat Kansas City in the playoffs because
yeah,
they have the balls to do things.
you know who else has the balls? Washington.
Yeah.
Like they go for it more than we do.
Yeah. And they get like 80% of their fourth downs
Yeah,
or something like
it's
that.
it's
Crazy.
insane, which is like also part of why I'm like I kind of think they might beat the Eagles because they just play with four downs and they're good at it.
Yeah. I don't know. This is the thing that was so frustrating with the Bills to me last week, though, is like when they did beat Kansas City in the regular season, I was like, they really might have learned their lesson here. They really might have done it. And then to go into that Ravens game and kick that field goal, I was like, you deserve to lose. You deserve to lose. And I really thought Lamar was going to go down and get
So
it. And he should have, could have, would have. But
here's another question. How much of a say do we think Josh gets in those situations?
I mean,
Like this weekend?
I think like in general, maybe not a ton because
Mhm.
obviously he would be saying, we're going. He'd be like, come on, we're going, we're going. Like,
I
he
mean,
wanted another carry in that Ravens game.
all I'm gonna say is it can be summed up by one singular tweet by Josh Allen that was one word, pain.
Yeah.
And you'd better believe that that game where they lost because they lost the coin flip is still living in his head.
Well, I wouldn't say they lost just because of the coin flip. I would say they
Well, the
lost because there was
defense not getting any stops either.
there was 13 seconds on the clock and they let Mahomes go get a field goal.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a problem. But no, I know, and I know uh these two quarterbacks now have met, like I forget what the stat was, but basically since like the 90s, the only two quarterbacks who have met in the playoffs more than Allen and Mahomes are Peyton Manning and Tom Brady.
No.
Uh, so yeah, there's a history here, and Josh Allen has not been on the right side of it, not once. So
Yeah.
it's this is big, like big brother, little brother energy.
Hmm.
I still think that there's a chance that there's a fuck you Mahomes game in there where he's like, oh, Josh Allen's your MVP. Okay, watch this. Um, and I don't know, man. It's like the Ravens last week too, like obviously they were too sloppy, and that's why I'm saying like neither of these teams showed me what I needed to see
Yeah.
to really make me believe they could beat the Chiefs. Because I'm like, it's I thought Lamar played a good game. I think like, he's gonna get criticized because of his playoff record because it's just the way these things work. But like
Yeah.
he did everything he needed to do to at least tie that game near
Hmm.
the end, and then you know, Josh Allen's going to get the ball back with like a minute 30 and has to go get a field goal to win. So like it's still not a guarantee that if Mark Andrews catches that
Yep.
2 point conversion that they win that game.
No. That
But
that fumble by Mark Andrews was
that was the really
the
bad
the
one.
the real
It's the
backbreaker.
killer, and the missed PAT and yeah, there was
Yep.
there was problems. They turned the ball over like three times. They missed 2 2 point conversions. They missed a
Hmm.
PAT and they still only lost by two.
Yeah.
So the Ravens still, same thing as last year. Like they're probably the best team in the league if they could just get their shit together, and they can't. So I don't know, man. I did hear that there's like kind of a theory that it's like rock paper scissors between the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs, and that like the Ravens were a worse matchup for the Bills. The Bills are a worse matchup for the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are a worse matchup for the Ravens. So I guess we'll see if that holds true. But I am not. I'm not picking against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. I'm not. I picked the Chiefs.
Yeah. So
Do the Bills have Patrick Mahomes, Matt?
if if I could say that there would be no bullshit shenanigans pulled by the refs, I think I would take the Bills. But I cannot sit here after seeing what happened last week and believe that that's going to be the case. So I think it's going to be painfully close, but I have to take the Chiefs.
This Matt,
But
even if you guaranteed me that there was going to be no shenanigans, you could promise me all of these things that you think would be advantages to the
yeah,
Bills. I have one question to ask you. One of the teams playing in this game has Patrick Mahomes. Is it Buffalo?
it could be.
It's not. It's not Buffalo. So we cannot pick Buffalo. They don't have Patrick Mahomes. The
Well,
other
good thing
team
I'm taking the Chiefs.
does have. I know. I want to pick the Bills so bad, but I
Yeah.
can't. They don't have Patrick Mahomes. And this is the thing is like, if I pick the Chiefs and I'm wrong next week, I'm fine with that. I'm not
Yeah.
going to feel bad about it. If I pick the Bills and I'm wrong, I'm going to come on this podcast and be like, God fucking damn it. I picked the Bills to
I
beat
fell
Patrick
for it
Mahomes.
again.
How do I fall for this every year? Not this year.
Yeah.
Not this year. One of these teams has
Yeah.
to
I
fall.
just,
And people will be like, the Bills have the next best thing. It doesn't fucking matter. How many Super Bowls has the next best thing won? How many Super Bowls has the next best thing been to? Zero.
yeah.
And I hope that, like, honestly, in my heart of hearts, I hope the Bills win the Super Bowl this year. That's the team I'm rooting for,
Yeah.
because the Bills for my entire life have been completely inconsequential to me. Tom Brady beat them more than any quarterback has ever beaten any team in the history of football.
Yeah.
So I'm fine watching. Like, that's true big brother,
Yeah.
little brother stuff. And I'm fine watching
Yep.
them win a Super Bowl. And I like Josh Allen.
And I gotta support my Lake Erie bros.
Yeah. They're the only ones left. So I'm rooting for a Commanders Bills Super Bowl, but I think we're getting Chiefs Eagles, and I think we're all just gonna have to live with it. I said,
Yeah,
telling
boy.
you, Matt, even besides the Patrick Mahomes thing, I swear to you, I saw Caitlin Clark in that press box, and I was like, God damn it, they're three-peating.
If we get Chiefs Eagles, I don't know how much of the Super Bowl I'm actually gonna watch at our Super Bowl party when I go to it.
We could just talk basketball next week. Pistons and Kings are both doing really well right now. That's all I'm saying.
It really is the best time for that.
That's all I'm saying, baby. Both above 500. Like, you guys have been, like, Cade's taken a big step this year. You guys have been
Yeah.
good. That ever since we fired Mike Brown, Christie's like 10-2 or something like that. Killing it. But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. And you can't, like, really find our videos on TikTok right now, but maybe you can. It was down for 12 hours, but if you deleted it, you can't re-download it. And I did delete it. So it's kind of a problem, but we'll be back somewhere.
Yeah, well, I feel like that situation's gonna go back and forth over the next 4 years.
Yeah,
So
we have bigger problems here in America right now.
no, nothing is bigger than TikTok.
So it turns out Matt's a Chinese spy. The playoff games are this weekend. So this podcast is going to come out on Friday, January 24th. The playoff games are Sunday, 3 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. College football is all wrapped up. Ohio State wins the national championship in a game that nobody cares about because they put it way too late in the calendar. Then we got 3 more football games, Matt, and then the dark times until we get to March Madness and then the NFL draft.
I say it might not be that dark for us with our teams doing pretty well. So
You might want to actually go watch some regular season basketball this year.
Yeah, definitely talk that offer over with Marley. So
Yeah, well, you know what's going to happen is by the time that we're geared up to talk basketball on this podcast, because we got to do the Super Bowl and then the post Super Bowl
yeah,
and then free agency and some other stuff. And it's be time to talk basketball, and Clint's going to come on, and both of our teams are going to be doing shitty by then. This is the time we have to strike while the iron's hot. If it's a Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl, we're talking basketball next week.
yeah.
So, all right. All right, bud. I'll see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye,
Bye,
Mom.
Robin.